A collection of ghost stories. Volume 1. A novel by Neil Wesson. Chapter 8. The St. Stephen's Day Hunt. Lord Harnett, master of the hunt, looked out of the first-floor window. In the courtyard below, the hunt members assembled themselves ready for the morning's ride. An air of anticipation filled the air as the riders and stablers chatted about the day's proceedings. The sound of horses' hooves clattering on the cobbles paired with the barking of dogs drowned out most of the conversation. The master checked his appearance in the full-length mirror. His dress was immaculate, the scarlet jacket and cream riding breeches were pressed with military precision. The riding boots that fitted so well around his feet and calves shone so much he could almost see his own reflection. A knock came from the door. "Come," he said in a commanding tone. A young lad entered, no more than 14 years old. He was dressed very much like his lordship, only a miniature version. In his hand he carried a silver tray, on it sat a glass of sherry. "I thought you may like a glass of something, sir," he said in his quiet, innocent voice. "Why, young man," retorted his lordship, a genuine warmth in his voice, "thank you very much." He took the glass from the tray and held it up to his lips. "Sit down, young man." The lad sat on a stool in front of a dressing table. "And who do we have here?" "Edward Bennet, sir." "Bennet?" The master recognized the name, "but we're from the Crown, sir. My father's the landlord." "Of course," smiled the old man, "Harold's young son. The last time I saw you, you were in short trousers." He tossed the sherry back in one movement. As he put the glass down on the dressing table, he felt a cold draft on the back of his neck. Although it was the 26th of December, the weather was unusually mild for this time of year. "So, where had it come from?" He finally put it down to the glass of sherry he had just consumed. "Is this your first hunt, young man?" "Yes, sir," said the lad. "I've been riding all year now, practicing for today." "Good lad," he replied, sitting down on the long stool next to the teenager. He looked into the middle distance and reminisced about days gone by. "I still remember my own first hunt," he said with a nostalgic airing in his voice. "It was all different in those days. If I remember right, I spent more time on the ground than on my horse. I'll never forget it though. The dogs bagged a fox. It was a good kill." "Did you get blooded?" "Oh yes, my father did it." "Will I today?" "Let's get one first. Then I will do it myself." Again a shiver ran down his spine. It was all different in those days. Now the hunt is plagued by these working-class protesters, all of them from the towns and the cities, not a clue about our traditional ways, damn do-gooders. In the old days none of them would dare stand in the way of the master's horse. Anyone who did would be whipped. "Really?" asked Edward, a hint of excitement in his voice. "Now, hunting itself as a sport is in danger. The government now are trying to abolish us, damn labor classes. The vote should never have been given to the common man." On the wall hung a huge mirror. From across the room the master looked at his own melancholy face. Then he saw something behind him. It was a fleeting glimpse, but a figure was stood behind him. He spun round to challenge the newcomer, but no one was there. Strange, he could have sworn a woman was a trick of the morning light. It must have been. This hunt, he continued, had its roots in the Middle Ages and has had a bloody history down the ages. It started out as a hunt for convicted criminals. The Lord would give any convicted man a fighting chance. This only happened on Midsummer's Day and St. Stephen's Day. The choice was theirs, the block or the hunt. The block was a quicker death, but the hunt gave them a fighting chance. Later in the 17th century it became more of a race between man, dog and horse. Man against beast. "So there you are, young man, today when you ride out you will be riding into history," and he said with a smile on his face, "you might even hit the odd protester, what?" This time man and boy laughed. His lordship liked this boy, they seemed to be on the same wavelength. The laughter died away. "A protester was killed once here. It was back in the late 1800s. By all accounts she was a strange woman, lived up on the Wolds in a shake. It was a cold winter morning in 1895. The hunt was planned for later that day. Among the coming and going of the stable lads the lord of the manor took a stroll around the courtyard. The horses were being exercised, the hounds fed, and in the taproom leather and brasses were being polished to within an inch of its life. The master was happy with the work being carried out by his staff, so he returned to the house for breakfast. After the sizable meal he allowed the newspaper to captivate his time for the next half an hour. This was interrupted by the butler knocking on the dining room door. "What is it, Hargreaves?" asked the thick-set florid-faced master. "The gamekeeper begs your pardon, sir. He would value a moment of your time, sir." Hargreaves was of the old school, almost pre-Victorian, steady as a rock and discreet as a spy. "I'll be out presently," he replied, not looking up from his copy of the Times. "Very good, sir." As silently as he had entered he left the room. Lord Harnett squinted as he left the confines of the house and out into the courtyard. There next to the door stood Prescott, the gamekeeper, cap in hand, waiting his lordship's pleasure. "Ah, Prescott. You wanted to see me, yes, my lord," he said, twisting his cap between both hands. Well, out with it then, busy day you know. It's the Molly woman, sir, she's been seen. The gamekeeper appeared to be on edge. And? Well, sir, you people from the village are all so superstitious. He said, come on, show me where. Molly was a mysterious woman who lived in the woods high up on Brantingham Dale. No one knew who she was or where she had come from. Several attempts had been made to run her off of the land, but every time a group of foresters had been sent into the wood to find her, she would disappear. The air of mystery surrounding her intensified on every failed attempt to rid her from the property. In the local inn, the foresters would tell their tales of how she had vanished into the trees, each tale embellished each time it was told. Some said she could talk to the animals. If she had lived 200 years earlier, she would have been burned as a witch. Were the animals her familiar spirits warning her of the oncoming rabble? Others said she was a tree spirit or forest elf. No one was entirely sure. Prescott had taken his lordship to the main gate of the estate. The gate stood on the only track into the grounds of the house. For a mile out after the gate the wood clung to both sides of the road. She was there, sir. He said, pointing into the trees to the right of the stone pillar which one of the gates swung on. What was she doing? Just looking, sir. Prescott now felt a little bit of a fool. Maybe it had been somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction bringing his lordship out to the gate. He felt the expression of disapproval on his lordship's face burn into the back of his head. He turned to face his master. Sorry, sir. Carry on. He said, turning and walking away back toward the house. On returning to the courtyard, much activity met him. Most of the horses were out of the stables and being walked around. The dogs were unusually frisky, all barking as though they had been excited by something. This pleased his lordship. The hounds would be on good form today. His own horse, Pegasus, was the finest for miles around. On every hunt it led the way. The head stable boy should be seen to him now. He would pay him a visit, make sure everything was in order. The moment he entered the stable he knew something was wrong. The horse seemed disturbed by something. The fire in its eyes had gone. As his lordship arrived at the gate he saw a figure bending down at the rear right leg of Pegasus. You boy, what do you think you're doing there? The figure remained in the crouching position, still and silent. You boy, he repeated in a louder, sterner tone, I'm talking to you. The hooded figure slowly rose and then turned. To the master's surprise, the figure wasn't the stable boy, but that of a middle-aged woman, her face haggard and worn. She looked considerably older than her years. In her hand she held a short-bladed knife, blood smeared on the blade. On the cobbled floor of the stable a small pool of blood gathered by the horse's hoof. What the hell's going on here? Shouted his lordship. His voice so loud everyone in the courtyard stopped their work and looked toward the stable. None dare investigate the cry. You kill animals. Said the woman, disdain in her voice. They do you no harm. Without them the woods will become unbalanced. You're destroying the wood's natural cycle. Mad, she's mad. He thought to himself. So I'm going to stop you. You can't hunt without a horse. Do you have any idea how much the animal is worth? He blurted out, if you've done him any harm I'll kill you. With a brisk act of defiance the woman pointed the knife at the master. A clear threat to him in his opinion. You insolent peasant. Grabbing a long hook off of the wall he swung it round in a circular motion over his head before bringing it down toward her. The curved hook embedded itself in her throat, blood shot out of the wound, both where it had entered and the exit wound opposite. The woman fell to the floor. A pool of blood forming around her lifeless body. Prescott was the first person to come into the stable on hearing the scream. On sight of the body he froze. His eyes bulged in their sockets and his jaw fell open. Any idea who she is? Asked the master without a hint of emotion in his voice. Sir, that's Molly, the woods woman. Good, get rid of it. Sir. Get rid of it, now he bellowed. Where, sir? His mind wasn't thinking straight after the shock of seeing the grotesque image on the floor. Come on man, pull yourself together. Yes sir. The new cesspit, we've just dug a new cesspit. Perfect, get on with it man, good riddance to her. Wow. Said Edward after listening to the story, is that true? As far as I know, he told the boy, the story's been passed down the family for generations so who knows how accurate it is to the what actually happened. Now run along, and make yourself ready. Edward left the room, a smile on his and a heart full of anticipation. 10 minutes later he was ready. Checking his reflection one last time he made towards the door. In the hallway he was met by one of the stable staff. Yes Carl, what can I do for you in this fine morning? Morning sir. The usual group of protesters are massing at the gate sir. Do you want me to take any action? The sinister side of Lord Harnett became prevalent, his face hardened and his teeth ground together. Do we have any spare dogs? Dogs, yes sir, about a dozen. No, he wasn't going to, he wouldn't. Then set the dogs on them. He said grinding his teeth. Carl didn't move, had he heard the master correctly? Well what are you waiting for man? Sir. Answered Carl scuttling off down the hallway. Holding his head up high his lordship walked out into the daylight ready for the day's hunting. The day's activities went well, no protesters plagued the hunt, and the hounds chased and caught 3 foxes. An excellent day's work by all concerned. Young Edward Bennet was blooded by his lordship himself, much to his delight. Throughout the hunt, though, the young boy couldn't help but think of the murder there all those years before. The image in his mind was brought to life when he saw hooded women in the woods watching the passing horses. Later that day, dusk was falling. The hunt bowl was now in full swing in the great hall. His lordship felt a little hot in the house, so decided to work off the 5-course meal he had just enjoyed with a walk in the cold, bracing December air. He found himself in the courtyard, now hosed and cleaned down after the aftermath of the hunt. The acoustics of the courtyard could play tricks on the ears with its echoing stone walls. He swore that he could hear someone talking. No one was around, it must have been a voice from the house. Standing looking into the sky, he could see the stars now becoming visible in the east, while to the west the last rows of sunlight colored the sky above the horizon. There was that voice again, behind him this time. He turned, no one was there. If someone was having a practical joke with him, there was only one place they could have slipped out of view, the main stable block. Slowly he crept in. It was almost pitch black in the stable, the only light came in through the windows. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust to the lack of light. In each stable bay the horses stood silent and still, not a shake of a mane or tail or nod of a head from any of them. That was strange in itself. He felt a chill in the air and shivered. There they were. The practical joker was standing in a shadow in the darkest part of the stable. "You there, show yourself." Silence was the only reply. He took a step closer to the figure, then something made him stop. A strong suspicion came over him that this person was not one of his invited dinner guests. He stretched out his left hand and took the first thing he could off the wall. The long-handled hook. If this was a thief, then he wouldn't be getting out without a fight. "Show yourself," he ordered again. The figure in the shadows took a step forward into the partial light of the window. It was a woman. Her hood obscured her face from view. "What are you doing in here?" "This is private property," abruptly asked the master. As she lifted her head, the light shone on her disfigured face. A face that was black with old blood stains, and he saw a hole in the front of her neck. Fear struck Lord Harnett. Something was behind him also, he could feel its breath in the back of his neck. In sheer panic he swung the long-handled hook at the figure standing in front of him. It hit her in the head. He felt no resistance on the swing. It had passed straight through her. The momentum swung him round through 180 degrees. Behind him silently sat the pack of hunting hounds watching him patiently. He turned back to the women. She slowly lifted her arm and pointed a finger at Lord Harnett. The dog stood to attention, then attacked him. Once dead, the hounds returned to the kennels in silence while Molly returned to the trees. There were no more hunts on that estate, no more protesters, no more deaths, no more need for justice to be handed out. The end.